Today, I want to share with you something I stumbled upon in my own speaking and was finally able to crystallize into a speaking technique that has made all the difference in making my speech sound more orderly, coherent, structured, and smart. This is the practice of using interpretive frameworks. I'm calling it an interpretive framework. I'm sure speech linguists and language pathologists have another definition for this. Some might even refer to it as using expanded metaphors, but I'm going to call this using interpretive frameworks because that makes the most sense. This is the idea of communicating a thought, an idea, an aspiration through the lens, through the framework. You're interpreting it through the framework of something more concrete. It could also be abstract as well, or something that people can relate to, that they have affinity with the situation. For example, if I wanted to tell you about the magic of language, the magic of words, the power of words, I could simply output those sentences and sort of meander around different key points about the power of language and how assembling words that represent ideas into a sentence can be more meaningful than the individual words themselves. Or I can choose to create a deeper level of meaning in what I'm trying to convey by speaking about language as music, speaking about language as if you, every time you speak, play the orchestra. The violins are a certain arrangement of words. You have the brass, the strings, the woodwinds, the percussion, and you are the conductor every time you speak. Sometimes you say some words and you speak with sharp precision. Other times, you fall flat on your communication. What you may have noticed about that particular description is that it was tethered to a host of words that related to music and orchestra. I used musical notation terminology like sharp, flat. I used and referenced various sections of the orchestra. That is what using an interpretive framework is it gives you a template, a mold that all you have to do is fill in. You have to color in the lines that you've defined with this interpretive framework. And it's allowed me to speak on topics much longer than I knew I had thoughts on them, because all I have to do is simply fill in this interpretive framework that I've given myself. Now, in that example, I was talking about language through the interpretive framework of it being an orchestra. Again, you can probably start to see here why this might be compared to a metaphor, and perhaps it is an extended metaphor. But it's an extended metaphor in the sense that you're speaking through something via a lens that allows you almost a specific filter and choice of keywords that hopefully can relate to something that people are familiar with, but also at the same time provide you a very unique way for communicating an idea. Another example might be if I'm talking about trying to navigate in my life and being torn in all these different directions. I might try to think of, and this is my recommendation to you, think of what feelings, emotions, sentiments, what you're attempting to describe, what that trigger, that introduction into the interpretive framework, what points does it give you to attach to that could generate potential frameworks that you can use to further explain the idea. Because you're not expected to come up with this interpretive framework before you communicate the idea. If you can, that's great, that's preferable. But oftentimes we're speaking and there are certain words that we use that we latch onto and then we build that out further. I was talking to someone the other day and he was making some reference to the culture and he used the word flood. And as soon as he used the word flood, that was enough of a trigger for him to start going into the story of Noah's Ark. And he was building off of that. I don't think this was intended, but it's an example. We do this all the time subconsciously in conversation, is we'll say something, we'll manifest a word that is instinctively related to maybe a very unique circumstance or set of circumstances, and then we'll build off of that and we'll continue on in that direction. Some examples of interpretive frameworks, once you've got those trigger words, might include a dust storm. You're blindly trying to find your way, wading through this minutia of information, and you don't know where the path is. Every single time you think you define the path, it gets blown over. And you could start to use keywords like sand or direction to parallel what might be inside a dust storm feels like to what you're attempting to describe. It makes it more tangible, understandable, and vivid, visual, but also real to your listener. I've also been obsessed with using speeding on the road, or any sort of reference to driving and roadmap. There's a host of keywords that come with that analogy or that interpretive framework, such as driving, the wheel, tires, road, destination, objective, navigation, roadmap. And it's almost as if you've sort of mentally purchased this package of keywords that now you can insert into your explanation. And it just brings a whole new layer of meaning, order, and coherence to what you're saying. Every other sentence includes a keyword that sort of ties back to this overarching interpretive framework through which you are in explaining an idea through. You could also use temperature. I wrote down a few other examples here, and I'll leave a list down below of some possible, whether you want to call these extended metaphors or interpretive frameworks, using them and taking the idea that you want to convey and mapping it to this interpretive framework is a way to sound more articulate, structured, and it brings more continuity to your speaking. If I can clarify anything, let me know, and hopefully this newfound secret of speaking with more order can be of benefit to you in some way.